Welcome to Dream Farm. On today's episode, we're going to talk about some of the things that Jack Huston has learned and some of the questions that he has from doing thermal drone deer surveys on how many properties?
Close to 100 now.
100 properties. You're going to learn a lot by flying a thermal drone over 100 of some of the best and potentially best managed whitetail properties throughout the Midwest. So when we come back from break, Jack and I are going to talk about his list of some of the cool things that he's learned and some of the questions that he's got.
Dream Farm is brought to you by Whitetail Institute, Research Equals Results, Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail App, Hoyt Archery, Stealth Cam Trail Cameras, and PH Outdoors Food Plot Drills.
So it's a windy day, otherwise we'd be outside. We actually flew my farm this morning and talked about it on a different episode, the results that Jack found here. But we got in out of the wind and we're sitting in his truck now. So Jack, I'm going to kind of turn this over to you. You had maybe some ideas of stuff you wanted to cover, and then we'll just kind of see where it leads us.
Yeah. First question, Bill, is why does deer density matter when you're trying to grow trophy bucks?
There's a lot of biologists that probably have a better answer. I'm going to give you my practical thoughts on this. I mean, I've owned land for deer hunting since 1995. So what is that, 30 years? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for 30 years, I've owned deer hunting land. So we were managing deer before it was, commonly popular. But that doesn't mean that I'm the world's greatest authority on it, but it does mean that I've had a lot of experience, looking at this from a lot of different angles. But one thing that really jumps out at me is if there's a lot of deer, the quality of the forage is diminished. And sometimes that means that literally they run out of food. That's one obvious way. And for sure, the habitat really gets impacted severely because deer, they browse and they pick whatever is the most beneficial to them at that time. So when they're going through the timber, they're picking, between this little weed over here and this little, whatever over here. They're choosing what they eat. And it's based not on some kind of a random decision process. It's based on what nature has shown them that they do the best with. They're eating what they need. And if all that stuff is gone because you've got too many deer and all the stuff that the deer really benefit the most from is already gone, you're going to have a substandard forage base, bottom line. And maybe you don't even have enough food plots to make up for it. There's not enough food. But let's say you do have enough food plots to make up for it. And now you've got clover over here and beans and corn and doesn't make it through the winter because you've got too many deer. Well, again, there's that period of stress. Not only do they not have the native forage that they can pick through and take exactly what they need, they run out of food sometime during the winter. So it creates a period of stress. And they can definitely live through periods of stress. So it's not like they don't ever have stress. But if you can reduce that, then the deer just are in better condition. A buck that's in better condition is going to grow bigger antlers. So it's a long-winded way of saying that food is probably the number one, and the quality of the forage, the quality of the habitat that the deer live in is probably the number one reason why lots of deer can contribute to a smaller upside potential. And the other one is something that biologists understand better than me, and that's this thing called social stress. And I don't know enough about it, but they've done tests on it, with deer and with all kinds of other animals. And if you pack too many of them together into one little area, they get stressed. And when they get stressed, they don't reach their potential as far as health. And again, the healthiest buck, the healthiest doe, they're going to produce, either bigger antlers or higher quality offspring. A stress-free environment generally creates all else being equal, the deer with the least stress are the ones that are going to be the healthiest. So did I bore you with that long answer?
No, that was a great answer. That was going to be another one of my questions: is what is social stress and why does it matter? And I think kind of answered that there. I think on the, when you mentioned forage and, how that gets degraded over time, I feel from talking to landowners and a few properties that I've kind of known the progression curve of how the densities work there, that I definitely see that being true, that it's almost, you won't see any diminishing, maybe output on what kind of deer you're producing there until after the deer density has been high there for a while.
Right.
So it's maybe not right when you get to your peak density, it's several years after that you'll see that.
Well, we definitely saw it. I've seen it in a number of places. I've owned in areas where the density was really high. We didn't produce hardly any really top end deer. We'd produce a lot of, well, let me give you a practical example. One morning, one of the early properties that I owned, it was a big corporation property. We had 4,100 acres contiguous, piles and piles of deer. Jack knows the property. But anyway, one morning on stand during the rut, I counted 52 different bucks in one morning. So 52 bucks. If I saw 52 bucks on this place, there'd be 3 or 4 that would be big. But there was nothing over 145, 150 in that bunch. And they weren't all young bucks. It was, so that's just a practical example. I went that whole season, multiple seasons on that property without seeing hardly any bucks over 170. And this is in Iowa, where the genetics should be high enough quality. It was just a density thing. And I'm going to jump into another topic real quick, Jack, then you can reel me back in. But I use this analogy of a target. So if you take a target with its rings, the middle of it is the highest density. It's like super high density area. That's maybe that property. And then each ring out has lower densities. The bucks tend to fringe out of those super high density areas, the mature bucks, and they live in rings 2, 3, and 4. And I don't know exactly why that is, but they don't want to be in that environment where the density is super high. They tend to fringe out of that. And the farm that I owned in southern Iowa was like rings 2, 3, and 4, or 3 and 4, or whatever, away from a high density area. And I felt like that was about perfect. I could always count on there being plenty of bucks around because even if I wasn't growing them, they were dispersing from those high density areas and coming onto my farm.
Next question. This is a big one I get from a lot of people. Why did we have bigger deer 10 to 25 years ago when there were more deer around?
Maybe the quality of the nutrition is the secondary factor to antler size. Age is always going to be number one. If the bucks are getting to be 5, 6, 7 years old, they're going to be big. They may not be as big as they could have been, but they're still going to be big, even if there's a lot of deer in the herd. There's no real mystery to this. They've got to get age, and whatever that means. I think people have gotten better at killing them now. For sure, trail cameras have made a huge difference in the ability of the average guy to knock on a door, get permission, and kill the biggest deer on that property. Whereas, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, he might have been happy with a nice, generic, middle of the road buck. But now he knows that there's a really big one on there. So he holds out and he knows that he crosses through this part of the farm during this, you can pattern them now and they're easier to kill. So people are better at targeting and killing those older age class deer. So why don't they all do that? Well, the average guy might not see that 5 or 6 year old as being a necessary goal. Maybe he thinks that nice 3-year-old that scores, 145 is a big deer. So everybody's better at killing them, and they're killing them, some of the genetically superior bucks, younger, bottom line. They just aren't getting as big. If you take genetics and you add age, you get giant deer. You throw nutrition in there or the perfect environment, you get world-class deer. That's where I think the dividing line is. You can grow really big deer most places if they get old enough, if they stay there, if they haven't fringed out. But if you're going to grow the biggest possible deer, then I think that's where all the density conversation comes in, where you're trying to bring your density or keep it at a level that reduces the stress.
And I've talked to some people, I think the control question of, taking age class out of it is, are our 2, 3, and, maybe 4-year-old bucks as good as they were 10, 25 years ago? And kind of the answer I've gotten from some good deer minds is they think they're maybe 10 or 15% less impressive antler-wise.
Yeah, and that's because of density? Or just because of
density and maybe nutrition,
erosion of the habitat?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I wouldn't have expected that. I would have expected, well, I don't know, because we've talked about it here too. It's like what we're doing on this farm is really going to be 2 to 3 generations before we really see the benefit of it, because it takes that long for the health to work its way through the herd. So if you make a bunch of really great improvements, you're not going to see it in that age class of deer that are already on the place, because they really benefit from the doe being in better health when she's, birthing or carrying the fawn, when she's nursing the fawn's healthier. So that it really is a couple generations deep before you really see the benefit of improving the habitat, of improving the quality of the forage and food plots and so forth. So I can understand that, because it would go backwards the same way. It'd probably take 2 or 3 generations of going backwards before you'd see it really drop off.
My conversation with Jack Huston got long enough that we decided to break it up into 2 episodes. So we're stopping the first half right here, and then we'll come back again with a part 2. And also, if you haven't found it yet, I'm producing a series for Hunt Stand on their YouTube channel that has more of the same style of land management, deer management type content that you're finding here. Well, I appreciate you joining me, and I'll see you right back here in a couple of days for the next episode of Dream Farm. And remember to always dream big.